Yeah, it's a Tyro's experience, man. That's part of why I wanted to bring you on is your health journey. Just get a little bit more insight into where you came from, how you got from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah. Well, that's a huge,
Go go as deep as
huge
you
story.
want.
I mean, like with anybody, right? Because we all come from different areas and upbringings and experiences, trials and errors. So I'll try to condense it into something somewhat digestible for the public. But I guess starting out, I've always been fascinated with just how the body works in terms of you can give it an input of any kind and just seeing the response you get as a result. So growing up, it was always like, I'm gonna try this activity or this skill or I'm gonna read this book and just like whatever the case is, whatever the input is, and just see how I interpret it and how I respond to it. I've always been fascinated with that. And so
Yeah,
the most tangible thing that I had to explore was movement. And I was brought up in a very active family. My mom was pioneer in weightlifting for women, Pilates. She ran her own Pilates business, true Pilates, not the watered down shit you see
yeah,
today. But my dad was an ex-athlete, so I've been around a very active family, and so they put me in an environment where I could explore that. And to me, that was fascinating because I tried all the different sports, all the training and the drills within that, and just to see like, oh, whoa, my body responded to this X, Y, and Z. Cool, right on. That was stupid. That didn't work for me. I'm gonna go explore something else. So that's what kind of kick-started the drive. And then growing up, growing up into an adult young man, it was you start getting introduced to philosophies within school textbooks, more the theory stuff as opposed to just like the F around and find
yeah,
out
yeah,
approach.
yeah.
Um, and so that really created an interest and drive and a bunch of rabbit holes that I could explore from there. And then from just personal experience, I had my fair share of injuries as an athlete. I played basketball my whole life. And going through that process of experiencing an injury, going through PT or whatever suggestions that they were giving me to recuperate, rejuvenate, and heal and so forth, it just kept. It was like a hamster on a wheel. It was the same thing over and over again. Where like I get to a point where I could get back to the court, and then something else would pop up, and it was just like, should I get to the point where I don't need any of this? Like I kept finding myself revisiting the training room or revisiting the PT exercises. Like I was never getting over the hump of just like, hey, I'm good to go. Let's go play. And so that's where I really started becoming obsessed with what is injury? How do we truly heal from injury? How do I make sure that this never happens again? If that's even a possibility, I don't know. But I'm seeing all these other guys kick ass. Why can't I do that? I'm doing the same thing that kid's doing in terms of showing up to practice, but he's healthy, kicking ass. He's playing on the court. He's doing his thing, but I'm over here just a mess. And so all of these things kind of geared me into the direction of rehab, injuries per se, and training into one, figuring it out for myself. And then I was able to be like, oh, let's see if I can spark this and share this knowledge with others.
Oh man, I think that's a common story for a few people that I've talked to that are into health now. It started in athletics, and it's the same for myself. It started with injuries and wanting to not be injured because
Yeah.
I was just like, man, I was like, what the heck, man? I take more care of my body than any of these dudes. But I tore my meniscus and had to get surgery. I tore my labrum, had to get surgery. I broke a bone in my toe, I had to get surgery. So it's like I just like couldn't get ahead like you. And so I was always looking for a way to counterbalance that and try to make it to where it was like a self-cleaning oven almost. Where it's like I would correct myself before it got to that point. So I think that's fascinating. It seems like a commonality for athletes that take that deep dive into their body, into movement, into injury. They almost always seem to go down certain rabbit holes and create like their own philosophy, which I think is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And where did Tommy come into play? Like how did he impact you on your
So did you
philosophy?
say you said Tommy?
Hmm.
Yeah. Junior year of college, I went down to San Diego to play hoops, and at that point, I was over sports, man. It was just like this. I just wanted to get college paid for and just move on with it. Cool. Um, and then as I'm going through the educational system, the joke that is university, especially within health, I'm only speaking within health. I don't know about other majors and topics of that. But sitting through class, I'm just like, yo, what am I doing here? Because it was just elementary. Whether it was elementary or just flat out BS that they were providing from a knowledge standpoint. I'm like, I need more. If I'm going to do anything in the field of health, I need to search different avenues because what I'm doing right now is not working. And I could see this as a 16-year-old, 17-year-old. I mean, 20-year-old. Um, uh, and so that's where I just took Instagram Explore page and started looking for people within my area, whether it was just personal trainers, strength coaches, just people in the field doing what I want to do and doing it at a high level. Steps that maybe they were 10 steps ahead of me because they have skin in the game. I was like, maybe I can start pulling from these people. And I came across TJ's page. This was years ago. I don't 5 years ago. I don't know specifically time frames. I'm terrible with that. And I saw this dude doing weird movements on the beach. And I'm just like, whoa, what is this? So I started diving down his page. I'm like, this is fascinating. A dude that kind of living how I like to live in terms of being outside, doing his thing, eating good food at the beach. Like, cool, somebody that I can relate to. That's fantastic. And then one day I'm driving down Highway 1 in Solana Beach, or maybe it was Cardiff by the Sea in San Diego, and I see this guy just hauling ass on the side of the freeway, doing these three-way shoulder moves, very aggressively. Like, oh, I'm like, what is happening here? I need to meet this guy. And so it was like, all right, that's a clear message, clear sign of the universe. You got to go check this dude out. So I walked into his office one day unannounced. For everybody listening, that might not be the best thing to do for people that run a business, but I'm a young, dumb college kid, so I showed up. I don't know what the man had planned that day, um, but as soon as I walked through the door, he gives me a big ass hug. What's up, brother? How you doing? And we just talked and jammed for like 4 hours on a weekday.
Very cool.
I don't know if a client canceled on him. Like if my business mind is his business owner mind, I'm like, what the hell, dude? What could he have been doing in that time frame? But he opened the doors, and just from then on, I was able to be a fly on the wall for the next two plus years. Um, just soaking up as much knowledge as possible, asking questions, just being like 3 steps behind, observing. And whenever I had a question or concern or wanted to explore something, he provided an avenue for me to take. So that was a really, really cool experience, really geared me in the direction that I am today. And so, yeah, big part of my life, big part of where I'm at today from a business standpoint, from a movement standpoint, and just as somebody that can offer a service within health.
Right on. And just to clarify, you have your own practice now,
Yeah,
and
I've had
are
my
you
my business I started in college.
right
So
on, dude?
senior year of college, I started training people, mostly remote, just people that were interested. Uh, and this is specific to my business today. Like I trained people since high school,
Yeah,
just people that wanted to jam with me, doing weird stuff, trial and error. But specific to the business, I started in college. Moved here in Santa Cruz 2 years ago. Opened up a physical location. We call it the Healing Slab.
yep.
Um,
Seen that on IG.
yeah, and just moving forward from there ever since.
Very cool. What do you got behind you? It's the 8 essentials of healing performance.
Yeah. This is his poster. So did you ever check that out?
No, I
Ever
haven't
see
seen
his
that
stuff?
before.
So these are this is from TJ, the specific poster. The principles is just human, and then you can call it just these are the 8 principles, essentials of what it means to just embody a healthy expression, a healthy life, a healthy body. And so it goes not necessarily in any particular order, but a belief in something greater, whatever that means to you. It could be spiritual, religious. It could be you, like just something greater than. Let me correct myself. It could be something that the power that runs you.
Yeah.
But it's something greater than self. You have a purpose and intention. So that's number 2. You got to have some drive, some
Yeah.
purpose within your life. Number 3 is relationships, a community, a small circle that you surround yourself with. And then we go sleep, light, nourishment, body movement, breath, and that is all.
Yeah.
So those 8, if we focus on those 8 essentials, you can pretty much take any area of your life that might not be as ideal, go down those 8, and you can assess what is something I can improve upon within these 8, amplify it, or maybe something that I need to completely eliminate from my life. And if you keep revisiting those 8 essentials, eventually you'll get to a point, you'll get to that root cause of whatever's manifesting as something that's not ideal within your day-to-day, within your expression.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, it's just a steady incline to the top, wherever that is for you. But it's a way to look at yourself, look at your expression, and you won't need anything outside of just your intent to put yourself in a position to express to the highest level that you desire for yourself. You don't need to rely on anything external. And so that's what he calls the 8 essentials to healing and performance.
I think it's interesting that they're in that particular order too, because I feel like maybe they're equally important, but that seems to me to be like the hierarchical 1, 2, and 3 that makes sense to me, because it's almost like the one below, like purpose feeds into something greater in yourself. Relationships feed a purpose. Sleep and naps. You need to have high quality sleep to be able to do all those 3 things. You need to meditate, breathe, and do this. So I think it's also cool to just have 8 principles. Like you mentioned, it's something you can remember. Everyone can remember those, right? And then you have this ailment or injury or something come up, whether it be physical or mental, whatever it is. You can kind of take a step back and be like, okay, which of these 8, if maybe multiple, what's going wrong in one of these 8 or 2 of these 8? What can I do to address that and then move forward? What's one of the principles that you think is the most neglected in today's society? I guess
depends on what kind of type of people you're looking at. Right? So I'm sure it varies from person to person, demographic, geographic, location, for sure, because everybody's influenced depending on their environment. But if we looked at it from like a whole, I think it would be relationships. Most people in the holistic world, they understand I need to sleep. Well, every human understands I need to sleep. I need to eat good food. I need to, they might understand that they need to breathe correctly, whatever that means for them. But I need to move. I need to eat good food. I need to sleep. I need to manage my stress. Most people understand that. I need to move my body. One thing that I think is super neglected is relationships, whether it is relationships with others or specifically relationship with self. Most people have no connection to self. You ask someone to, like, a cool little trick you can do, and this is just a movement test that sometimes I play around with humans. And it goes, I say, can you raise your arms overhead? Yeah, I can do that. And then we lie them down on their back. Can you raise your arms overhead? And they go straight out in front. And it's like, it doesn't sound like much, but if you think about it, that would be still here, arms overhead. But it's just like a little test to be like, do you know your body in space? Do you know Do you have familiarity with how your body moves? Or just when a symptom pops up, do you listen to that? Do you have a connection? Do you have an understanding with that? So I think relationship with self is probably the biggest. And if you start there, you can pretty much address
Everything.
the latter seven,
Yeah.
like easily. But it always starts with you. So I think that's definitely the number one in my eyes.
I completely agree. So I'm not familiar with your particular practice. Let's say I come in, I call you and say, hey man, like I got this going on. Like say my leg hurts or something. Um, I come to you. What's like the process that you go through? What's the first
Yeah.
thing that you're addressing?
Yeah. So I spend a lot of time on first just having a conversation. Um, One, getting to know. So getting to know the individual, getting to know the person. So you and I would have a lengthy conversation and we'd cover everything from obviously the current situation you're dealing with. So let's just take you have a leg injury, an ankle. You rolled your ankle. Okay, how'd this happen? Tell me everything that went into this event occurring. But then also getting to know you personally. From specifics within movement, like, all right, what's your training background? What's your injury history? Just a basic assessment within that. And then questions within your day to day, your lifestyle, how you live, what you love, what you hate, that kind of stuff. So it becomes a little bit more intimate. And then, I mean, that goes on for
Yeah.
as long as we're jamming for, right? So I've had evals that go for 3 hours. It's intense because I want to. We're building a trust, we're building an understanding within one another because we're talking about your health, the most important thing that we have. And so once that's all kind of established, then we'll start getting into specifics within training and rehab. And I spend a lot of time nailing down the why, the premise behind movement, behind injury, behind symptoms, behind a healing response, behind those eight essentials. Why injuries occur. What does pain mean? What is inflammation? Why are these all healthy responses that the body takes? Because the majority of people, they think of pain, they think of something negative. They think of inflammation, I got to get rid of this. And so we have to really understand the why, the premise behind all of these things before we dive into anything specific to the what's in the house. And the what's in the house would be, for an example, a specific movement input, an exercise that we would take. Because I could give you anything, but if you don't understand why you're doing it in the first place, there's going to be a cap of how much that could provide for you in terms of a response. But if you understand the true principles behind training and rehab, you're going to be able to put forth so much more intention, so much more energy, so much more belief behind the input. And then the results from that is insane.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we spend so much time here is when we do get to the specific movement inputs, everything that I would suggest to a human is internally driven. Very rarely do we rely on anything external, especially in the early stages of rehab. Like an external example would be like weight, or you kind of covered it earlier, the arc wave, some kind of electronical device, some kind of supplement, some kind of exercise equipment. Like anything external, like that's for later down the lines when your foundation is locked in and then you want to use that as a supplement too, sure. But early on in rehab, everything's internally driven. And so kind of going deeper within that, let's take a specific movement. Like if I'm going to suggest that we hold a position for time and the goal here is to push to failure, and you don't and let's say there's a lack of understanding behind that entire process of you starting from 1 second to 300 second and the stuff that's going to present within that small amount of exposure, you're going to quit on it fairly quickly. You're not going to reach that true point of failure. And that's what we're striving for with specifically with rehab and training. But if you understand the why, if you get the premise behind it, what we're seeking for, what we're trying to achieve, that whole process is a little bit more digestible. You'll have more intention behind it, and you'll really take advantage of that specific input, and your results from there just, it's ridiculous.
Sure.
It's freaking phenomenal.
That particular instance is, it reminds me of Viktor Frankl. I don't know if you know who that is, wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He said,
Yeah.
if a man has a powerful enough why, something along the lines of, if a man has a powerful enough why, he can bear almost any how, but you have to have that why. And it's a microcosm, but even in that 300-second threshold, that's going to be it's going to be a suffering of some sort, right? Like a 300-second dead hang, whatever you're doing, a max dead hang, that's going to create some suffering. It's going to create some pain. And if you don't know why you're doing it, then the likelihood of you being able to withstand a longer threshold is much, much lower than if you know, oh, the reason I'm doing this is so that I can have this result, which will impact me this way. So I think the why is very important, even in movements, which is something you don't hear a lot. And something else I wanted to touch on that I think speaks to your philosophy more than just right out of the gate, more than anything. Most people listening to this, and you may have as well, have gone to like a regular PT. Like in regular meaning like conventional, like insurance, hospital PT.
Yeah.
They didn't ask any of those questions to me. Not a single time. I've gotten 3 surgeries. All 3 of them, the beginning of them, I went to regular PTs, or I'll say conventional. They didn't ask me my why. They didn't ask me my relationships. They didn't ask me about what foods I was eating. They didn't ask me about why I even wanted to get healthy. They didn't ask me about what movements I was doing on and off the field or whatever. They didn't ask me about my personal life. They said, oh, you just had surgery on this part of your leg. Here, let me take you through the exact same thing that every single other person that I've done this with will do. And that's not to disrespect them or their intention, because part of me thinks that it's more of a product of the medical system as a whole that we've created. But to me, it's fascinating because the PT that changed my life, and this all comes back to Tommy John's actually a connection in a weird way. There's a guy named John Forty in Atlanta whose son played with Will and Sean on the team, and he's a kinesiologist, like guy in Atlanta. So he was always sort of healthy. He's a very healthy dude, and I asked him, I said, hey man, I have this shoulder surgery. My range of motion's like stayed the same for like a month after surgery. I'm like, I can't do anything. And he's like, you need to go see Lauren Polivka. And I'm like, okay. So long story short, I go to her and she immediately does what you just mentioned. So we talked about why did I play baseball? Why did I want to get healthy? What happened in the injury? What's going on like on and off the field? So we talked about that stuff. Number one, I immediately trusted her more. So what she was going to tell me, I was going to buy into more than some dude who spent 3 seconds talking to me and then told me to do a movement. You know, does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
So I just think that that's a really, really fascinating part of the holistic. That is holistic in itself, in its nature. So I just find that fascinating, and I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, kind of ties down to number one, your belief. Whatever approach you take, as long as you believe it full tilt, that's the one you want to take. I don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with it. TJ doesn't have to agree with it. But if it's in alignment with your belief and your truth, go full tilt, burn all ships and dive into it.
Yep.
And let's say it doesn't work. Well, at least you're confident enough that you put all your intention into it. So then you'll make the change afterwards. Mm-hmm. Or you'll just get the results you want. Hell yeah. But belief is number one. You gotta believe in whatever the modality is that you're gonna be taking. So when I first started, I turned away so many clientele. And I was burning through my savings the first like 4 months because I wanted to do it the right way. Whereas if someone came in and they had 1 foot in, 1 foot out, for whatever the reason was, whether they weren't buying into me, I didn't deliver the message as cleanly, or they just had other avenues, or their upbringing, whatever the case may be, they weren't fully committed. I'm not going to waste my time nor your time. I will help suggest some other alternative for you if you're open to that. But this isn't the one to take. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Find the one that you want to dive into fully, 100%.
Yeah.
Because that's everything right there. So
it ends up being a reflection of you as well, because Say somebody comes in, they're like, hey, I want to work with you, Trevor. I want to do your program. And then what happens is your program, they like half-ass it. And then somebody asks them, hey, how'd you like working with Trevor? Oh, I didn't like it, man. I didn't like it. It didn't do a good job. It's like, wait, you didn't even believe in what he was telling you. You didn't invest yourself fully into it. So I think that's a powerful point as well.
Yeah,
It comes down to the belief, and I think it's part of your job as the practitioner, or maybe the vessel with which like somebody like myself or a client would be learning or pushing themselves through to get healed. I think it's part of your, responsibility to find that belief and then foster it, if that makes sense, as opposed
definitely.
to just neglecting it entirely. But that's that's seems to be the overwhelming common denominator between most conventional medical practices nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised that they even know your name.
Yeah,
You sit onto the table, they throw on, or they'll probably put you on a bike.
yeah,
You come
yep,
in with a fresh TJ surgery. Yeah, we'll just do 20 minutes of cardio on a bike to get you going. Oh, by the way, what's your name?
yeah,
I only have you down as TJ.
yeah,
TJ surgery.
yeah.
Wait a
Patient number
second.
496.
Yeah, I got to go. This is not going to work.
Dude,
So
that's
no, that entire model. I mean, I've been down it many times, and that's why I'm here today, because I tried that many times, and it did not work, and I saw it over and over again. So if something's not working, one, is it making sense? Not really. I did 3 sets of 10, and this is supposed for like 2 exercises, and I'm supposed to come back to sport.
yeah,
Interesting. That doesn't really make sense to me. Now the next question: is it working? Fuck no, because I'm still here. I'm here for the fourth time.
yeah,
So, no, unfortunately, that entire model is somewhat of a disaster.
yeah.
And I can confidently say that because I've been through it and I've seen it with not just me, but with everybody that goes down that model.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
it's sad to see, like you said, it's unfortunate, but that's the way of the world. And I think that opens doors for people like yourself who are taking that holistic approach. And I think that, to me, that's the number one differentiator between sort of like it's like a rabbit chase with symptoms. If you don't take a holistic approach, it's literally just like you're chasing a symptom, and then you catch that symptom, and then the way that you fix that symptom in modern health, the modern health way is by taking something that has another symptom. So then you run after that, and then you run after that, and it's just this hamster wheel of symptom chasing, as opposed to,
mhm.
you mentioned it before, getting to the root cause of why anything is happening and then working your way up. It's harder. It's more time intensive. It's more focus intensive. But in my opinion, there's really no other way to actually reach health. Um, and and on that note, you mentioned it earlier. I'm curious because I think a lot of people have different definitions of health. Like it's something that's can vary. For some people, health might be to be able to go watch fall on Sunday, Saturday, Sunday for the rest of their lives, which totally cool. For some people, it's to be able to surf every day, do jujitsu, whatever it may be. So I'm curious, what is health to you? Like, what does that mean to you to be living a healthy life?
I think, or I know it for myself, that it's to be able to express life to the highest level. Let's just start there. And that's all going to, as you say, vary for the person in terms of how they want to express life. But for me, if I think it, I want to go do this. That sounds attractive. I want to try this. There shouldn't be a second guess whether or not my body, my confidence can handle that from a stress standpoint. I can just go do it and explore it. That's true freedom. That's infinite. That's abundant. And the mind is you can create whatever you want. So if I can think it, I'm gonna go do it. And so that covers everything. So whether it's developing a relationship with somebody, bringing somebody into your life, sharing your life with somebody. If it's something physical, taking on a new sport, new activity, a new hobby, a skill of some sort, a hobby, some kind of mental practice, writing, singing, whatever the case may be, if I want to go explore that, can I just freely step into that environment and do so? Because not a lot of people can. The majority of humans, especially in the States, this Western society that you see today, it's like, oh no, I could never even imagine myself going for a 1 mile walk.
Yeah.
I could never imagine taking that leap of faith. And that's literally just walking from my house to the grocery store. Because
Yeah.
what if I get hurt? or the what if
Yeah.
game happens. The
That's
what
a
if
phenomenal
monster comes
point.
into play. So true health to me is being able to express life at the highest level and do whatever it is that you're craving. That I call it your inner God. The person that talks to you within is telling you to go do without second guessing.
That's interesting. I've never really thought about that. It's almost like shortening the reluctancy, because you hear that often. It's like, why don't you? Somebody says, "Oh, I want to go snowboarding, but I can't." I couldn't go snowboard. Well, why? Because you're like, well, what if I get hurt? Okay, well, that means you don't have enough trust in your body, in your mind to. Let's see. Sorry, something.
Where'd he go?
Are we good?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay with that leaf blower?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
you're all
cool.
Good. But yeah, it's like shortening that distance between, like, not a craving necessarily, but a desire for an experience and the reluctance to do it. And that's a great. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Laird Hamilton?
Yeah.
Okay, I draw massive inspiration from Laird Hamilton. I think he's an absolute living legend. And one level deeper, there's a guy named Doughnut Wildman. Have you heard of him?
No.
He passed away. But Laird Hamilton talks about him on his Joe Rogan podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts of all time. And he talks about Doughnut Wildman. He was 85 years old when he died of brain cancer. The year that he died, he snowboarded from helicopters. He surfed. He lifted weights. He played golf.
Yeah.
He did all as an 85-year-old. And there's that brings in another. There's a book called Younger Next Year, and it's basically about how, like, you don't want to die. Most people die this way. It's like just a long, steady. When in reality, the most vital way to live is, and then you die, right? So it's like, it's instead of dying slowly every year, it's you're living, and then in Doughnut Wildman's case, it took him brain cancer killed him in 2 weeks, but he was snowboarding, he was surfing, he was doing all these things, and to me, that's like one of the most compelling ways to live life, bro. As an 85-year-old, this man was snowboarding out of a helicopter. When you got 25-year-olds that say, dude, I can go snowboarding. I'm not healthy enough for that. Yeah. Bro, this guy is 60 years older than you doing it. And obviously that's a little bit of an extreme example, but I think that's like, I don't know if that describes health, but I think, to me, when I think of health, I think of that. I think of that guy, like being 85, doing whatever he wanted.
There's so much to dive into here.
Yeah,
got goosebumps hearing that story.
Dude, straight up.
I gotta check him out some more.
I never heard him talk before. I've only heard him being talked about, but I like I've reverence for him, dude, because he was a successful entrepreneur and he took the money and instead of sitting on a yacht, whatever, Laird Hamilton said that his trick was he never hung out with old people because they made him feel old.
Nice. Yeah.
So he would hang out with like people 30 years younger than him. Something to be said about that.
It's you're going back to relationships. You're an embodiment of who you're around the most. There's like a famous saying where it's like you're a representation of like the 5 closest people you hang with, and it's true. So if you want to improve yourself, surround yourself with people that are better than you. And it's a default. Yeah. You're gonna have to up your game.
This is a phenomenal point. I agree with you entirely on that note. What do you think is the best way for somebody to find people like that? Because that's we talk about like being connected through social media and stuff, but what social media can do, it's almost like hyperconnectivity. So it's like we're connected that nobody's really connected. And it can be troublesome for people to really find that group of people that they want to be a part of that's pushing the envelope, because their friends from home are like have you heard the crab bucket? The crabs in the bucket? analogy?
No.
So I think it's crabs. Yeah, it's crabs. Basically, if you get like a group of crabs in a bucket and one of them tries to climb out, the rest of the crabs will pull them back down.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
it's like a lot of people can get stuck in friend groups where it's like that. So what would your advice be to somebody that's young, mid 20-year-old that's trying to find a little bit, not a little bit, but trying to find a different group of people to be around so he can start raising his game and being the average of 5 better people? What would you give
Yeah,
it? What advice would you give to them?
that's huge. I think for starters, it takes a level of humility, and that's for any aspect of life. If you go into it with a level of humility, you're going to be able to learn and pull from whatever that context is. So it's definitely a struggle finding those people. I think if you cover that first step, you'll be able to really see that for yourself, as opposed to fighting fighting that apprehensiveness or that reluctance to trust somebody like that. But I mean, it's an example. I mean, we can relate it to training. It's like back in the day, you'd look at the biggest guy in the weight room and go talk to that person.
Yeah.
You look at the fittest person, like whatever the context is. If you're a basketball player, you'd go into the gym and find the guy with the coldest guy on the court and pick his brain. And so you can take that with any kind of sport, any kind of approach. Who's the smartest person in this room? Who's the smartest person in my class? What do you do? Start asking them questions. How can I be like you? Or how can I close the gap between me and that person who's clearly a step ahead? But that's all going to take a level of humility, because if you think you're the shit, you're never going to be able to look at somebody else as a opportunity to pull from or learn from.
I totally think that the humility is the first part.
Yeah,
You're spot on with that.
And I would always encourage, like, physically go out and find that person. Like, social media is great. I mean, that's what kickstarted the story earlier with TJ and I. That's how I first found him. But I didn't act upon it until I physically went and decided I got to go do this. Because otherwise you're just theorizing over and over again without taking action. Like, you can think it, but if you're not actually going to do it, what's the point to an extent? So humility, and then physically going out and finding that person. Like, for me specifically, let's see. I've had 3 clientele in here that have found me because they saw me doing something like just on the beach one day, and they came up and asked questions. Like, one of the guys in here, he's 60 years old. What the hell does a 60-year-old need to learn from me? I'm 25. The level of humility that man is taking to be able to, like, look me in the eyes and be like, I can learn something from this person, even though I'm 3 times his age. That's insane. That's mind-boggling. It's also fascinating and badass, because that dude's a stud in all aspects of life. And it's the reason why he's expressing life at such a high level, because he takes this humble route with everything that he comes in contact with. So that's awesome. Definitely the number one variable for sure.
That reminds me of the name of this podcast, dude, and Tyro. Like, honestly, because that is the literal reason that I named, like, the brand, the podcast. That is because Tyro means novice, beginner, young soldier, somebody who is entering a new arena but wants to learn, wants to fight. And the level of humility that it takes for a guy like that, for example, massive, dude. Because that guy, like, 60 years old, bro, I know, like, way more than you. You know shit, your health shit, whatever. Fuck your health shit. Like, you don't know anything. Exactly, right? But then he's cutting himself off to any growth in that regard. And you mentioned it, dude, going up to somebody that's better than you. Like, I was in a basketball, for a reference. Say I wanted to be better at basketball. You were better at basketball than me. I saw you in the gym, and I didn't have humility and I came up to you in a pompous, pious, like holier than thou way, I'm not learning shit from you. But if I say, you know what, dude, this guy's uh, like 3-point game is like, I want to get to that point. I want to get that jump shot. Like, what's he know about that? So I come up to, hey man, dude, I like really enjoy watching you play. You got this blah 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 blah. You got good moves, all this shit. What do you do here? Instead of being like, you understand what I'm saying? It's like I don't know if I'm articulating that well. Yeah, it's curiosity and humility, which is ties back to Tyro. Like I mentioned, my brother and I used to mess around all the time. We call each other idiots on purpose, and because idiot, like smart people think that like if you're the smartest person, you think you know everything. Not to be condescending about it, but it's kind of a joke. But like we would compliment each other, and I'd be like, "Bro, that was idiot. Like that was a real idiot thing to do, bro. Nice." Just to like encourage, because we're so afraid of looking like idiots. We're so afraid of looking like we don't know what we're doing. When in reality, looking foolish is like the first step into learning.
Yeah, you got it. That's the main step in life is you have to be okay with failing over and over again. And that's a universal truth. It's in every context of life. It's in training. It's in rehab. If you want to see results, you have to fail.
Yep.
As much as possible. That's all we're striving for in here. Because within failure is growth. And that's where success comes from. If you want to be better at public speaking, you're probably going to have to go through some tough times.
You're going to have some bad
some
speeches.
Tough events. Yes, some terrible performances there. Like whatever the case may be, you have to be okay with failing.
I think that's so important, and I think you mentioned it too, from an actual physical standpoint, like from a mental and psychological standpoint, that's equally as important. But the physical manifestation of that principle in training, like you mentioned, coming back from an injury, you literally you need to seek failure.
Yeah.
When you're coming back from an injury, that is no different than anything in life. And I'm not sitting here coming from somebody who's like, yeah, I do that every time. I always try to fail. I always am not afraid of looking goofy, dude. I need to be better about that. I'm actively trying to be better about that. But if you could touch on that, it's a little bit in the weeds. But what do you mean by that? Coming back from an injury, you should be seeking failure. What does that actually mean?
Yeah. There's two things that we have to address. First and foremost, all we're concerned of when we step into the environment that is training and rehab is there's two variables that are constantly changing that you have to address right off the bat. And it's your expression. How am I expressing today? Or in this specific moment in time? Is it how am I expressing some massive symptomology? So if you have like a specific injury, okay, how's that doing? Did I sleep well last night? So am I sluggish today? Am I all messed up? Am I hungover? Did I just get in a fight with somebody, with a loved one? Did I just eat terrible? Like how am I expressing today? So it's always going to vary. It's going to vary from first thing in the morning to later that day. Your expression always changes. So that's the first variable that you have to address. The second is your intention. Some days it's super clear. It's like, oh, dude, I'm fired up. I know my purpose. I know my why. I know my intent. I'm ready to rock the house. And that's going to influence how you then go about movement, training. You'll be able to, you're only concerned with maximizing those two things within that specific moment in time. So if your expression is kind of low one day, but your intention's high, how you go about movement and training is going to vary from one day when your expression's super high and your intention's super high.
Yeah.
Or both are low, or one's high, one's low. But as long as you understand what those two are for you, from there, you're trying to squeeze all the juice out of that lemon. Just take advantage of those two variables as much as you can. So to give you an example, yes, we're seeking out failure within training. So we'll take a move where we just hold position. We talked about the scap hang. You mentioned the scap hang. That's where you're just hanging from a bar for time. One day you come in, your expressions, you're feeling good. Your intention's pretty defined. You might then express through your scap hang and you PR. You get a 2-minute hang. Whoa, hell yeah. The next day, it's like, oh, dude, I don't feel so good. I don't even know why I'm here. And then you failed in 34 seconds. But you truly failed. You gave it everything you had, and you failed within 34. That's everything. That's all we're really concerned with. So it's not like I need to PR every single day,
Yeah.
or I'm a failure, or I didn't do it right. No, you did it perfectly. It was relative to you within that specific moment in time. Guarantee, like, I am not hitting a 5-minute lunge every single day. No way in hell.
Yeah.
Or I'm not PRing in whatever capacity or context every single day. Absolutely not. It's always changing. But as long as you're maximizing those two variables, your results are always going to be towards the direction that you want to go. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. I think
Nice.
in the context of baseball, because that's my experience, I remember hearing something that really changed my perspective because as a pitcher, most people are always trying to throw hard, right? It's like, oh, I'm trying to hit that max. I'm trying to hit 95, 96. And then you hit 95 or you hit 94 or 90, whatever it is for each individual. For me, it was like, I remember sitting like 92, 93, touching 94 in a particular outing. And then the next outing, I was like 90, 92, 90, 91, 93. So I was lower. I was like, damn, bro, I thought I was really starting to make strides. And I heard this thing. I can't remember who it was, but I heard this, like, not principle, I don't know what to call it, but like this ideology that we don't think of our CNS, like our central nervous system, as a muscle, really. Like we think it just kind of like this baseline. When you max out doing something, whether it be a dead hang, whether it be a lunge, whether it be a pitch, throwing a baseball as hard as you can, whether it be a sprint, your CNS has to recover as well, right? So it's not like it's like a muscle, right? Like most people would never blame their CNS for failure. Like that's not their PR, if it makes sense. Most people, oh, my muscle's still never recovered. But dude, it's the exact same way. So you max out you PR one day on a scap hang. The next day, it's almost like impossible for you to PR again, frankly. Unless you just have some crazy stuff in the tank, but like, it's just interesting to.
Yeah, I would say yes and no. Like
expound.
it depends on the vessel in which you're exploring that max intent. Right. So, something like a skill of throwing a pitch, I understand that having a peak and a recovery time afterwards, if you really maxed out. But something like a scap hang, a lot, or maybe a more sub-max movement, so to speak. It's like, do you ever truly fail out of position? Like truly fail? Like I think you would pass. like most of the time, it's actually no, you quit.
Yeah.
Like even on all my PRs on a movement, some of the movements that we do in here where you just hold position. Like, did I truly fail out of position, or did I just kind of bitch out after some insane number like 10 minutes? Like, sure, like it's still impressive, like whatever. But I think there's definitely context because the body is more robust, more resilient, more powerful than we could ever measure. It just really takes a clear intent. I think intention can override expression at times, and I think expression can override intention at times. So I think it I wouldn't put a cap on the body.
I appreciate you checking me on that. I appreciate checking me on that because now that I'm saying that out loud, like that is a pretty limiting belief in terms of, and you mentioned it in terms of like a specific skill, something that's like a specific instant, then perhaps that's the case. But putting a limit on that, a ceiling on what I just said, basically is perhaps not the right way to look at it.
Yeah, but your example of throwing a pitch would be like if Usain Bolt maxed out on his 100-meter, is he going to replicate that the next day? Like depending on the level of fatigue and damage his body just took on from a stressor, probably not, right? So that's where, like, okay,
Yeah.
once you start getting into the extremes, like those two examples, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
But
oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, you got it.
I was just saying, from a premise standpoint, it's we love to put measurements on the body and its ability to express and whatever the capacity is, and that's the last thing I would want to do.
Are you familiar with David Goggins?
Yeah, that dude's a stud.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example. I mean, however far on that side of the continuum that he is, but I mean, dude, what's that saying? The body gives you what you ask of it, and so yeah, and I think you're exactly right. Like, how many times has anybody actually, like, physically failed? Like, how many times have your muscles in a scapping, for example? How many times have you or somebody legitimately your muscles no longer contract, can no longer hold this position? Who knows? Like, it's kind of hard to tell. Like, where is that line between the giving up, even if it is, like you mentioned, 10 minutes or some crazy number? Where is that line between being your mind and your muscles and your body actually shutting down? That's it.
It's a trip.
Hey, you got to find it, man. Yeah, that's a tough thing to find.
Yeah,
but
I think that's one of the biggest games within life.
Yeah,
that you get to mess around with and explore.
Yeah, that's, dude, finding your limits, or at least your perceived limits. That's a good point. You mentioned several times, and I know this is a big thing that TJ does, like holding positions. That's not something that's common for, like, most people probably have never just sat there and held a dead hang or held a dip or held like any number of position. I don't know if you guys do the glute ham raise machine, right? Yeah. So, like, what's the point?
Yeah.
What's the philosophy?
There's my baby right there.
Let's go. What's the philosophy on holding position?
God, I think, let me just make sure that's good. Cool. I think from a general standpoint, a premise, and then from there you can kind of put your spin on it. You're able to create an environment of life or death. Meaning, I'm going to set up certain parameters within a hold. So we just took a simple push-up, a plank. And we never plank from the elbows. So any PTs here listening, always plank from the hands. Because if you plank from the elbows, it'd be like doing squats from your knees. There's a massive disconnection. But okay, we'll take the push-up top, holding a plank from the hands. You set up certain parameters, so how you start is how you finish. Straight line from head to feet, hands in line with shoulders, and then tight right in that midsection. Because as fatigue presents itself, brain's going to take path of least resistance, and it's going to arch the low back or cave the low back or round. It's going to want to, like, if your arms were in line, it's going to want to shift away to lower the lever, shorten the lever, or take pressure off the joint. Little things to compensate. So we set up certain parameters, so how you start is how you finish. And then from there, I'm going to hold until death. Now imagine all the possibilities that's going to happen from an adaptation standpoint. The conversation you're going to have from body to brain, the amount of exposure, the amount of stimulus you can bring into just that setting of holding a position. It's infinite. I don't know. It's life or death.
Yeah.
All I know is right before perceived potential death, brain's going to release massive amounts of powerful shit in the blood to survive just a little bit longer, to push just a little bit more. That's what you're chasing for in an extreme slow hold like that. And you can do it in the face of some of the most gnarly symptomology. Someone with a freshly torn labrum, can we get you in a position where you don't have an immediate response, symptom-wise? Let's just take push-up top. You feel good? Yeah, I feel good. Okay, hold, go. Yep. What's your intention right now? And it's like, I feel fine. You're able to take, like, we can get specific now, just the musculature, the tissue of that area of the body, the damaged tissue, and stimulate it maximally. When you stimulate maximally, what happens? You recover maximally. You adapt maximally. The cool part with the holds is you can replicate that. It's sustainable. So you could do that 3 times a day. whatever your intention is for that moment. Maybe first thing in the morning, you get 5 straight. Holy shit. That was the most intense thing I ever did. Midday, dude, I failed at 90 seconds. And then you still total up to 5 because you get a lot of exposure within that. And then maybe in the evening, it's like, dude, I just fucking peed hard. I got 4 minutes and 25 seconds. Holy shit. But what you're doing is you're stimulating that tissue to the nth degree, the most maximal that you can, safely. And you can replicate that. And that's the other factor. It's safe. So let's say you get in position, you feel good, and you push close to failure, and it's just like brain throws on the governor. It's like you got to bail. The exit route, you just take a knee. Oh my God, that sucked. That was the most hard, difficult thing I ever went through. And then you just take a knee and you bail. It's like, oh, fuck. Glad that's over. Take a couple of deep breaths, and then you revisit the hold. So if you think about it from a stimulus and exposure standpoint, 5 minutes in that relative to taking a band and just going like this, internal, external for your shoulder, it's going to blow that out of the water. So the results from that, and that's just step one. That's the basic progression. I mean, I got 10 variations that you can build off after that. So that would be the general, the premise behind the holds. And there's other things where it's like, from a neurological standpoint, the connection from tissue to brain to tissue is insane in terms of it fires 8 muscle fibers to the brain and back and forth, switching on and off, like rapid, boom, 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 boom. So you're getting this neurological connection. You're teaching endpoint. You're teaching the stopping position. You're stimulating at the most end point of a joint. So now anything less is easier. You're hitting muscle at length. You're hitting the 2 short and bottom positions. So brain feels everything in between. Like all the little nuances that they talk about. Sure, you can fantasize over all that. Let's just take the simple fact that you can stimulate to death, life or death situation. That's a really good place to start with.
Yeah, I agree, dude. And I will challenge anybody that's listening to this to 2 things. Actually 3, if you're really about it. Do a max push up top. So like at the top of a push up, hold it, arms locked as long as you possibly can. Do a max dead hang from a pull-up bar. And do a max lunge. And I promise you, if you push yourself, it'll be 3 of the hardest things you've ever done. Because I remember, seriously, TJ sent us one of the things. I think I was dealing with like an elbow injury, like a slight elbow strain. And I said, hey, man, like, what do you think I should be doing? And he said, start doing push-up holds. And I'm like, okay. I'm like some arrogant sophomore in college or whatever. I'm thinking I'm strong. And I remember he was saying like, do it for, I don't remember how long he was telling me or suggesting that I do it. I remember the first time I did, I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like I'm way weaker than I thought I was, man. Like, like this is very, very difficult. And you're exactly right in terms of something I never thought of. The exit route. When your brain gets to that point, you just take a knee and you're good. But say you're doing something with weights or with like a band. Say you get to that point and you're not in control, or like there's external force, like the weight or something, and you can't just take a knee. And then that's where perhaps something that's not supposed to happen happens when your brain hits that point. But I'm all for it. What exactly what are the main holds? I mean, I know that you do the push up top, scap hang, the dip, I guess, lunge. What are the main holds that y'all do?
So I would say like I have a thing where it's like your daily movement, like minimums. And so if you just took lunge, so a stride of some sort, you're splitting your stride. So you're hitting everything at length. Lunge or split squat. Let's just take lunge. That would be number 1. A dip of some sort. So whether it's push up bottom or you get the dip bars and you hold that bottom position. So this is in a stretched. Hang and Supermans. If you just did those 4, maybe you do 2 in the morning and the other 2 at night, and you did that consistently for like a month, you're going to be in good hands. And that's
Superman's, people listening, Supermans are laying on your stomach, alternate.
Yeah, there's a couple variations. It's very popular in Pilates, but yeah, you're lying on your stomach. The way I would suggest doing it is keeping your forehead on the floor, pinned on the floor, And then you're just raising opposite limbs. So left arm, right leg lifts up, comes back down, then you switch. Right arm, left leg lifts up, and then you switch. So that's not necessarily a hold base. You could hold that, but that's more
Also
reps.
very difficult.
Yes, it's a powerhouse of a move. But those would be my 4 that I would just fit those in within your day. We all have 20 minutes. You have 10 minutes in the morning. You have 10 minutes at night. You have a lunch break. Those are like the top dogs.
Yeah.
And then if you have access to a glute ham, if you just hold that parallel position,
Oh yeah,
you're solid.
that's how I actually I've been starting to finish my like days that I lift hamstrings and stuff. I'll finish with that, and that's one of those other ones, dude. You can really exercise some demons, man. When you're at the end of a hold, that is tough, dude. That it really is.
It's funny you say that, because when somebody texts me or someone PRs it, or they do really good in a hold specifically, they're like, "Oh, I just got 3 minutes." I'm like, "Oh, nice, man. How many demons did you fight? How'd you know?"
Infinite amounts.
I fought them all.
That's how it feels, dude. That's really how it feels. And the other cool thing of what you're saying, obviously save the glute ham, push-up hold, bottom or top, dip. You could find a corner of a table or countertop, pull-up bar. You can find a bar at a freaking playground. Superman's, you literally don't need anything. Squat hold, lunge hold, whatever. You don't need like any hold like that. You don't need anything but stuff that's around, either yourself or thing around you. So I think that's fascinating, dude. I really do. I need to be, not, I don't need to, but I'm going to start implementing more of those. I really do agree with that philosophy. I think that's a very good way to go about it.
Nice. Everything that I have in here at the quote unquote healing slab is just there for aesthetics. In terms of the equipment, all I really need is 3 feet of space and some intention. like what more do you need, man? So like if we start diving into something like sport performance, if you just take the body weight of the individual and generate massive amounts of force internally driven, you're going to see the best results. Because very rarely in life are you relying on anything external. It's how you move within that external environment. So if you just own your own body, you're more foundationally ingrained and prepared to handle anything external. So let's start there.
Yeah, dude, and that little thing you said, that all you need is 3 feet of space and intention, man. That should be a shirt, because that should be on a billboard. It really should, because that's so true. Like part of the excuse that people, I've done it before too, man. Like I've been like, oh, dude, I can't go to the gym. I don't have time to go to the gym today, so I guess I just won't move. Like I won't do like whatever movement or training that I was going to do. Bro, that is so far from the limiting factor of moving. Like gym is like you just mentioned, it's like almost aesthetic. It's like icing on the cake. Or if you want to go heavy or whatever you have, you can do one of the hardest workouts, if not the hardest workout you've ever done, with enough room for you to lay down flat. It starts within, like you just said.
Yeah, you can take any philosophy. Like it's not my approach. It's not TJ. It's not Jay Schroeder's approach. As long as you understand the premise behind it, you can go into any person's program and maximize it for yourself. And it's all going to be internally. It's not anything external. I've yet to see anything external trump something that's internally driven. Yeah. Because that's how we started as kids. You didn't have somebody teaching you, hey, you need to start learning to pick your head up off the ground and crawl. You didn't. No one told you, hey, 2 arms on the table and start bouncing around rebound fashion so you get a sense of proprioceptive and awareness of self within space. No one told you that. Everything's internally driven. That's how we started. You don't have a coach. You don't have a trainer as a child. You're figuring it out on your own. So tap into that.
It's intuitive curiosity is what it's.
Exactly.
I've never thought about that either. That's a great point, man. Nobody ever gave you a walking program when you're, you know what I mean? Nobody said, hey, you need to lift this. No, you just like started testing shit out, and you're like, I can hold this for a second. Let's see if I can pick this leg up. And it's intuitive curiosity is how I would describe that.
Nice. It goes back to also what you described as I think the two biggest factors with growth: hum, humility and curiosity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Maintain those two, and it's infinite in terms of wherever you want to be. So
Yeah.
hell yeah.
And another thing that you mentioned is force. And I've seen like you and TJ post about it and stuff. Force absorption. Like I've seen videos with the barbell. I saw some guy the other day on your page doing curl. Like it looks like curls almost, but they're like absorbing the bar. What's the whole philosophy on force absorbing?
Yeah. So this kind of goes back to one of your earlier questions about what is health to me. And it's, freedom to do whatever it is that you want to do. It all circles back to one, whatever it is that you're going to do in life is expressed through this vessel. And I know you've mentioned this on previous videos of everything you perceive in this experience, this life is done through this vessel that is your body.
Mm-hmm.
So the more your body's prepared to handle stuff coming in, the more you can take that on for yourself, whether it's positive or negative. Right. And so from a physical means, the more your body is prepared to handle force, and force comes in through all variations. It comes through physical force. You walking is like 2 times your body weight in force. Once you start jogging and picking things up, it's amplified even more. Um, you throwing a baseball, it's not the baseball that's heavy that's creating the damage into this upper limb through the rest of the body. It's the force you're generating through snapping that arm, whipping that arm. So everything is force related. And then you can get into things like emotional forces. You and I having a conversation is this exchange of force. You having a fight with a loved one, someone dies that's close to you, that's a force you have to take on. Anything chemical related, I mean, we have chemicals all around us in this day and age. Psychological forces, however you want to categorize, is at the end of the day, it is still managed by this physical body, whether it's physical, emotional, psychological, or chemical. It's a force the physical body has to take on. So the more the body is prepared to handle forces of all kinds, the more you're going to kick ass in life. So within training, that's the main focal point, is teaching your body from your feet to your hands and everything in between, joint wide, body wide, to handle massive amounts of force. That's training, that's rehab, that's movement, that's exercise. That's the premise. That's why we do what we do from a movement standpoint, is to prepare your system to handle force. And so the very basic is the holds. It's teaching the body end position, how to handle forces in the most extreme positions. And if you do it from the top and the bottom, brain fills everything in between. Then you start progressing the more advanced movements. You start adding range of motion. Do we add weight to that? Maybe down the line, if that's something that's curious of yours, if you're curious about that, or we'll just move faster
Yeah.
because you're still internally driving that. So you're still in the driver's seat. You're in control. But once we start adding more speed into it, you're adding more force that the body has to absorb. And then you just keep progressing within that. So take that video you saw, the guy dropping the barbell and he catches it. You're taking 45 pounds. So yes, we're using weight here, but that's just as a tool. What he's doing is taking 45 pounds and adding a little bit more to that via
Mm-hmm.
speed and force that he then has to absorb. So another thing that we do, like stepping off of an elevated surface and sticking the landing in a squat. That's a force you have to absorb. So there's definitely progressions to it, but that's the focal point, is teaching the body to handle, not just absorb, but whatever you produce, you can then absorb. There's a really cool saying by Dan Fitger, Want to Be Fast. Have you seen his page?
I've
He's
not.
within this world of Jay Schroeder, TJ, and DB Hammer. If you want to jump 40 inches in the air, if you want to throw 99 miles per hour, if you want to sprint a fast 100-meter, I don't know the world records for that. The brain first has to be confident that it could handle that. It has to be confident it could land from 44 inches. It has to be confident it can take the snap of the elbow at 99 miles per hour, whatever the target is. If it's not confident from that, it's going to put the governor, because it's a defense mechanism. It doesn't want damage to happen. But if you give it confidence through your preparation, it's going to release that governor, and you can go explore and express that. So that's training. It's preparation exceeding whatever the performance is. Performance is everything in life. It's whatever you want to do, but you have to be prepared to handle that. And from a specific standpoint, it's handling that force.
I mean, there's a ton to unpack there. That brings two things to mind. The first of which is the idea that most injuries, at least the way, I'm not a professional, I didn't go to school for this stuff and all that, but like the way I perceive it is most injuries occur when your body or a specific joint or muscle is put into a position where it takes on a larger amount of force than it is capable of handling.
Exactly.
So for baseball, there's too much force from my UCL and the surrounding musculature to handle. It compromises, and that's when that injury happens. And the other thing that comes up to mind is in my, I think it was my 9th episode that I released last week. I talked to my buddy AJ about the idea of like passive and active range of motion, and how people confuse the two. They conflate the two things. Like, oh, look, I can do a split, or I can touch my toe when I'm like using my hands to grab onto something and like pull down, right? Or I always, for some reason, and I mentioned that episode, so I won't go too far into it, but pitching is the back leg, the drive leg, internal rotation is very important for speed, because the further you can get into that range of motion, the longer you can ride the slope and get into your legs, if that makes sense. And so I was always like fascinated how to gain internal rotation. And I remember I would have like 45, 50 degrees of passive, meaning like when my trainer would like lift my leg to like measure internal rotation, I'd have like 45, 50 degrees. And then I'd have like 20 to 25 degrees of active where I'm doing it just on my own. And the reason I bring that example up is my understanding, once again, I'm not a professional, you know more about this than I, but is my body's not going to willingly put me into that discrepancy range. It's not going to put me into the 45 degrees, even though I have passive range of motion there. It's not going to put me into that. It's going to stop at 25 because it can't control that range of motion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And comment on how, I don't know if that's right or wrong. That's literally just how I perceive it. So I'd appreciate your comment on it.
No, that's it. That's it. And the more you actively prepare the tissue to handle a deeper range, the more your brain's going to have confidence to let that happen. It's going to give you that freedom. Everything that the body is doing from like a governor standpoint, a constraint, a symptom, is just in response to what it knows it could handle. And it's there to protect. It doesn't want you to get fucked up. It also wants you to express, right? But it's only going to let you express to the level that you can handle and you're prepared for. So it's like it's a happy medium. What you give it, it gives in return. What you don't give it, it's going to be like, okay, I know what's best for you because I run the show here.
Yeah.
So no, that's it exactly.
The jumping analogy you just gave is, I think that's the clearest picture of that, dude. So if you want to have a 40-inch vertical, the very first thing that you need to do is train your body to be able to handle that 40-foot drop or 40-inch drop. Did I say 40 foot?
I'll take 40 foot.
Yeah, if you want a 4-foot vertical, then if you want a 40-inch vertical, then you better train to be able to handle that 40-inch drop, because like you said, your body's not gonna exceed the limit that it knows that it can handle. So that's
yeah.
And point.
To your point though about like having your passive being 45 and your active being 25, I think there's still a yes and no to that as well. Because you can look at stud athletes, stud humans who can perform these massive amounts of things. And what's their training background? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you see the most athletic kid and you can fly through the air. Does he practice jumping from a 44-inch box to absorb the force? Probably not. But to do that at a sustainable level, I think that's when it comes into play too.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then for the people who don't have that natural ability as developed quite yet, then that's a good approach moving into that world, so you can sustainably improve that. Do you get what I
Yeah,
mean by that? Like, yeah, you
totally.
might be able to in game moments when you're on the mound and you're asked to throw X pitch, you'll probably be able to dive into that 45-degree range.
Yeah.
But to make it sustainable, yes, you want to actively be able to control that down the line.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
There's a video. I don't know if you've seen it. It's like this, like older middle age to old age white reporter with some like African tribe. I think it's the Maasai tribe, if I'm not mistaken. And it shows him. Have you seen that where they're just
Are they
jumping up
doing
and
the
down?
pogo jumps?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. The tribesmen are, dude. They gotta be 30 inches off the ground, just literally straight up calf. Like, no people listening, like literally just jumping with your toes almost. No flex in the knees, no flex in the leg, just off.
Yeah, no arm propellant, anything.
And quick too. It's like it's touch the ground, go. And they had to be 30 inches off the ground. And then this older white reporter dude, I mean, he might have gotten 8 inches off the ground at 3 times the level of like time. Like, he was so much slower, and it was literally a third, fourth of the height. And
Nice.
so what that exposed to me, or at least explained to me visually, was number one, the way they live. Like, their lifestyle is more plyometrically, like plyometrics are like intertwined with their lifestyle, right? We live in a sedentary life, in a sedentary society mostly. Obviously, we can change things within our lives to do the opposite of that. But most people are going to an office, they're sitting down. I'm sitting down right now. Most people sit in their car and they sit down, they don't move. But these tribesmen are moving all the time. They're moving plyometrically all the time. Number two, like you mentioned, like that's just a gift. Like, that is an adaptation for them to be able to do that. I don't know if I could ever train any amount of my life and be able to jump 35, 40 inches off the ground like them. So there's definitely different factors, but I think it's kind of a good segue into talking about plyometrics. I mean, just the idea of using body weight to create training environments is fascinating to me as well.
Yeah. It's the 3 feet of space and intention line.
That's what it comes down to, man. It's awesome. You should make a shirt real.
No, that sounds.
No, it literally look. It would be like my gym is called 3 feet of space and intention or something. I don't know. I could see that.
Hell yeah.
Pop off them, but
hell yeah. We'll split it 50-50.
Yeah,
the idea.
That'd be awesome. No, I mean, I think that I want to touch back on one of the things mentioned earlier. That's the because this is profound to me, man. And me and Will talked about it at length. But the happy donut is healthier than a sad salad. What does that mean to you? Like, what is that? Obviously, it's an idiom or whatever, a metaphor. But like, what does that metaphor mean to you? How do you extrapolate that into the rest of life?
I think you can relate it to the example most people know that of the glass is half full versus half empty perspective. So it's looking at something that no matter the circumstances, it's finding the positive within. So specific to that example, happy donut's healthier than a sad salad. Your intention, your belief, your mindset, your perspective going into consuming something such as food is going to play a bigger role than the actual ingredients within the food. So and it's the two ends of the spectrum. So if I make this, what we consider a super healthy meal, now it's very perverted, or some people don't even think greens are good for you. But we'll just say a salad with some really clean meat, really healthy oils and fats. Like, okay, just what we consider a really badass healthy meal. But if you're going into it with shame of like, oh damn, like the salad is supposed to be good for me, but I don't want it. It doesn't taste. It's not matching my cravings. the process was just awful. It took me 30 minutes to make. I spent all this money, and you just have this woe is me mentality within it. The salad is not going to serve you as profound as you may think, just because it's quote unquote healthy. And then vice versa, if you have this delicious treat in front of you, this chocolate cake that you've just been craving for the last week, and you finally got your hands on it, and in the ingredients, it might be Costco ingredients. It might not just be homemade.
Yeah.
Where it's actually kind of healthy for you, nutritious for you.
Yeah.
But if it's just like shit ingredient from Costco, from the gas station, but it's just like, it's been on my mind. I'm totally in line with this food right now, and I'm going to crush it. That's going to serve you so much more than the former, by far. Now, can you only survive on that? Sure, probably. But if you want to optimize your situation, why don't you just apply that perspective to something that's actually also very nutrient dense?
Yeah.
And you get both.
Yeah.
So that's how I would phrase it. And it's one of the biggest variables that's ignored with the nourishment. People just think they apply it to movement, where it's just this 1-to-1 ratio of like, this nutrient gives me this and that's it. It's like, no, there's so much more that goes into it, especially with your emotional state and perspective of the food. That's going to play such a more profound and impactful state onto your body.
I 100% agree. And my buddy Vance on an earlier episode was talking about how, like, because like the whole seed oil debate and basically just like a lot of food is just straight up like poison, more or less, in terms of the actual ingredients. Like, it's just processed sugar, seed oils, all this stuff. He was talking about a specific instance where all he had access to was like a Domino's pizza or something, and he remembers thinking to himself, dude, I'm not going to be neurotic about this. I'm not going to like freak myself out. I'm going to eat this pizza with my friends. It's going to fuel me. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to enjoy the taste. I'm going to love this pizza. And then it literally, instead of being like neurotic about it, like, oh my gosh, like all I can eat is this pizza and it's not good for me, blah, 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 blah. You're exactly right in that. I believe that, and this is something I need to work on, or I want to work on.
Nice.
That perspective is huge. I really do think that the intention that you come into something with will change the outcome almost more, if not more, than the actual thing that you're going into.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett's a great example. I don't know if I spoke about this with Will, but Warren Buffett supposedly drinks like a Coke and eats McDonald's every day. And he's like, it's like the stress that he doesn't have for eating that is like better for him than the nutrients of eating healthier stuff would be for him.
Boom. Boom. Exactly. I mean, they do that with pro athletes. Like, I remember Chad Johnson would only eat McDonald's, and I think TJ would mention Brian Urlacher, like these stud humans that like, oh, they must probably, maybe not LeBron. I think LeBron's pretty dialed in, but like just stud
DK
human
Metcalf.
beings.
Dude, have you seen his diet?
Isn't it like candy?
Yeah, bro. He literally just eats candy.
Fuck yeah.
Which is crazy.
Whereas if you try to like create this beautiful nutrition approach to them, like it would probably be a disservice, because it's way more stressful and sympathetic to him than just going to a McDonald's and mowing down a hamburger.
There's something to be said, man.
There's some, yeah, exactly. There's proof in the pudding right there. So I would just encourage having that understanding, having that perspective, that intention, and then finding foods that are fairly nutrient dense.
Yeah.
And you get best of both worlds. So with nourishment, what I suggest is, I don't suggest a way of eating. Absolutely not. Like, you have to only eat protein from wild caught fish and grass-fed meats. Never eat any carbs. Like, no.
Yeah.
Like, eat whatever you want to eat, but if you follow some premises, some principles within it, eat foods that rot, eat foods that you have to cook, have the happy donut is happier than a sad salad intention, cook all your meals, make it from scratch, connect to your food. You can pretty much eat anything you want.
Yeah.
And
100%.
Things in moderation. I mean, there's a Japanese saying where it's like, eat when you're 80% full. Eat when hungry, stop when full, stop when 80% full, something like that.
Yeah.
like, so there's little principles that you can embody
Yeah.
that will gear you towards having a very effective nourishment plan for yourself. But it's not putting you in a box of eating a certain way or eliminating certain foods. Like, no, you can eat literally anything you want.
Yeah.
But might as well take advantage of some really healthy principles within that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost I have done this to myself before with certainty. I've put myself into a nutrition box where it becomes, instead of my optimal nutrition, which at the time I might have been eating extremely healthy and covering my mineral basis and micronutrient basis, but the stressor that it became on my life was detrimental, even more so than the micronutrients and all the healthiness and the vitality of the food. Then that was a gain. So it was like a net negative. And there I don't know if are you on Twitter at all?
No.
So there's a guy named Noah Ryan who I follow on Twitter. Great follow. A lot of really, really solid information. He talks about, or he might have only talked about it one time, but it struck me very profoundly. I'm resilient, not neurotic. And I just used the word neurotic, but it reminded me of a quote that I thought that I had, that I kind of it derived from several different people, but the goal is to optimize the ideal so that the margins are more ideal, not non-existent. So nice. It's like, I for a long time, I like tried to make them like, so you have your ideal, which is like where you want to be living 90% of the time, right? You want to be in that sweet spot where you're just flowing, living good, eating healthy, but you enjoy the taste. And then there's that 10% where it's like, that's the margin. I was trying to literally make the margin non-existent, which becomes tyrannical. It becomes like a tyrannical endeavor, which is no fun. And you treat yourself a tyrant and a slave, which is not a relationship that you want to have with yourself. So the idea is I optimize the 90% so that my body is robust and physiologically resilient enough so that this 10% of discrepancy, whether that be the freaking chocolate cake that I eat at Costco or the 2 days that I don't train the way I was anticipating, or whatever may be the case, that 10% my body is able to handle and is resilient enough to take on, as opposed to being neurotic about it. I just think that's a massive paradigm shift for me. And maybe that will touch somebody else out there, but that really profoundly impacted me.
I love that. That's everything. Life is meant to be lived. It's so free. Life is so free for you to go explore and experiment with ideal inputs, with not ideal inputs. But as long as, if you're foundationally ingrained and solidified and you have your preparation and dialed in, you'll be able to take things that aren't ideal and it's not going to do anything harmful to your system at all. Like the body is the most robust, adaptable intelligence around.
Yep.
But it does take a level of understanding of that, of an awareness and intention, and then foundation for sure. So I think you can even up it more than 10%.
Yeah. I've heard
easily.
Like 80, 85 or 80, 80, 20, 75, 25. I mean, I do think there's a, I think there is a certain level of foundation, like you said, like you need to be covering certain micronutrient and mineral and vitamin bases, in my opinion, to live optimally, like to have a healthily and vitally functioning body. Like I believe that to be true. That being said, you mentioned it, like if one night of drinking, like, hey, you want to go have some drinks, okay, that's not going to kill you. Is there options within that drinking category? Is there healthier and more anabolic options in between drinks? Sure. So maybe opt for those as opposed to the catabolic options. There's just always there's always that dichotomy that you got to operate within. And I think it's life is lived in somewhere in the middle, not on the edges, right? And for a long time, I was like trying to operate on the edge, like most optimal, and then I was becoming less optimal because I was so neurotic about being optimal. It was a bad rabbit hole. But you mentioned something that I find fascinating. You talk about life is free to explore, and as I came to understand yesterday, you're about to make a move here.
Yeah.
What's going on with that, man? That
I saw your post about wanting to hit Central America? Is
Yeah.
this just for visiting or for good?
No, dude, I'm fully bought in on probably next spring. I'll be
Nice.
living somewhere like Mexico or Costa Rica for a extended period of time.
Nice, nice. Well, yeah. So it's funny that that thought presented for yourself because that's the direction I'm taking. Um, yeah, closing up shop here and then moving to Puerto Escondido. That's Oaxaca, Mexico, really far south,
Mhm.
close to the border. Um, and going to start that journey there as you call it a nomad or whatever category they put. Um, so really looking forward to that. That's going to happen the 29th of this month.
Dude,
So
that's so sweet, man. I think that's
eh,
been awesome.
nice. It's full tilt, like selling my car, closing everything, dispersing all my values to people that I know would appreciate it, and gonna fuck around and see what happens.
Yeah, you're fuck around and find out, man. Dude,
Yeah.
what's well, first off, do you know anybody in Puerto Escondido?
My really good friend is from there but lives here.
Very
So
cool.
there's a level of connection that he can kind of introduce me to. But outside of that, no,
You're moving solo.
it's moving solo.
What's the living
And I
situation? You just gonna be Airbnb, apartment? Like what are you in?
yeah, so there's a couple options. It's super casual. So like part of me was like, oh, I need to have everything set up right when I get there to ensure I'm good. I could still do what I need to do from a responsibility standpoint. Man, it's so casual. Like I was talking to one of the buddies that I was connected with. He had a place, Airbnb place. Um, and he's like, yeah, I'll rent it to you for 3 months. And then I bought my ticket. I closed everything here. And he goes, oh, by the way, I don't want to do this anymore. Good luck.
Damn. So you're
So
like,
I'm
oh,
like, oh, shit, okay. But it's in terms of availability, it's not bad.
dude, that's.
I'll show up, stay at like a hostel or rent something for a couple of days and then find something more long term.
Are you gonna be
But I
doing?
could find
Go ahead.
go ahead. I can find this house that I'm living at right now, which is 2,400 a month. The same expression representation of for 450.
I dude,
And
actually, yeah,
I'm
dude, that's insane.
yeah, yeah. So I'm amplifying, and it's not like I don't do anything in my life to regress. Any choice that I take, it's there to move forward, to amplify.
Mhm.
So there's so many variables that go into it that it's an amplification of my life. So I'm really, really, really excited for that.
I'm pumped for you, man. That's a gnarly experience. Something that you may be surprised about how many people swiped up on that story because I said like woke up feeling like woke up feeling compelled to move to South America with the bros. Anybody down? And I probably got like close to 10 responses. People like, dude,
Nice.
like let's do it, like let's do it. And I think
Hey,
it's something that lives in the heart of a lot of people, specifically young men. Dude, it's like you wanna something refreshing, bro. It's like, for example, you're letting go of all these physical possessions. I think environmental change is the quickest way, the most visceral way to level up your life. I really do believe that
nice.
because you're forced to reckon with who you are and who you want to be in that new environment. So it's like you have all these habits and all these cues in your current environment, in your old environment, and then you move to a place with none of those same cues, none of that same environmental uh, stimulus, none of those people. So you get like it's like a clean slate, and I think that's awesome. I'm damn well might see you in in town in a couple months or at least early
Dude,
2024 if you're still
I'm
there,
expecting it, man.
bro. That's
Because from what my understanding, you're starting to explore some surfing too.
dude.
Yeah,
That's are you gonna be surfing down there,
yeah. It's one of like the is it the 10th wonders of the world surf wise.
dude?
Like with I don't know what that's called. Like you've heard those like oh
Yeah,
visit these 10 things in the world. So for surf specific, like it's a badass spot. So
yeah,
I'm pretty excited for that.
yeah, dude. Last time I went to Costa Rica, well, the only time I went to Costa Rica, which was in June, I surfed for the first time, and it was like my main goal. Like the only thing I like had to do while I was there. Like I was free flowing, but I was like, I'm getting in the fucking ocean on board. Like I'm surfing.
Nice. Nice.
And that feeling is hard to replace, hard to replicate. So I'm you very well might find me in a Mexican coastal town. I mean,
I'll have a place available, so I'm setting it up so when people want to come live it up,
that's
it's
tough.
ready to go. So
Are you gonna be doing online training?
yeah, so I'm gonna put this business is going to be strictly remote.
Very cool.
And there's reasons for that. Like the whole concept of, I mean, the healing slab was coined the healing slab just because it's kind of a cool story. One of my first clientele, he works in masonry, so laying stone, very very cool job.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the flooring here is concrete underneath the mats.
Yeah.
And he's like, he's a hard dude. And he goes, oh yeah, working out on the slab. Because it's just a massive concrete slab. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That's kind of cool. I like that. And then there's natural light, running water, all this greenery. We're outside by the beach. You just heard a seagull.
Yep.
Like, it's very healing.
Yeah.
You can call this the healing slab.
I love it, dude. That's a good name. That's a good place to do.
Yeah. So it took off with that. But the whole concept is I had all of this knowledge up here. All of this stuff. From all the mentors I have, all the resources that I dive to. And I was like, it's time to really get some skin in the game. Because I don't care how much you got up here. You can't deliver it and work with it. How much does it really serve you? So 2 years of just hardcore one-on-one for myself, with my clientele, to really get some skin in the game, see what works, see what really stood out from up here and transferred into real world application, and get really good at what I do. So it got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm pretty satisfied and I'm tired of working from sunrise to sunset. So we'll make the move. Now I can confidently know if I'm working with somebody remote, I can make sure I can suggest everything that they need for their certain circumstance, and confidently deliver that. So in terms of maybe I do something down there, I don't know. As of right now, I'm just going to be strictly remote.
And that's it harkens back to 3 foot of space, man.
Yeah.
You don't need much. Like, it's not like your philosophy is one of those ones where, or your training protocol is not one of those ones where you need a massive rack and a trap bar and 100-pound dumbbells and all this. 3 feet of space and intention, man.
That's right. That's right. No, anytime you're dealing with a struggle, whether right now we're talking about injuries, so symptoms of some sort, but anything in life, you want to simplify as much as possible. Eliminate as many variables, inputs coming in, simplify to the nth degree, and then you start tackling it one step at a time. So with movement, let's just start with the body. Don't worry about any other modality. Let's just take the body and start stimulating and integrating as much as we can. You're going to be fine. So 3 feet of space and some intention. I think that's the title for today.
Dude, that's a phenomenal phrase, bro. And I think that's like representative of a lot of things in terms of your philosophy, what you're about, and your perspective on health and healing. So, I mean, I think that's a good place to wrap up as well, dude. You got any last thoughts? Any last things you want to share? Where can people find you?
Instagram is probably the best. That's where I'm most active and share all things from day-to-day content, and then just powerful messages there that I think serve others. So that's Trev, TREV _Funk, FUNK. So just my first and last name. Outside of that, I have a YouTube channel where I post just specific movement inputs, that if people ever want to explore and have fun with that, have at it. It's open to the public. But that's pretty much it.
Dude.
I have a website, thewellnessbydesign.com, and that's where you can dive into some more rabbit holes if you're curious. I try to put up some good information there, from top to bottom. So website and Instagram are the two best ways to reach out.
Right on, man. I can't tell you how much I support your philosophy, your message, and I can't encourage people enough to look into it because it really is unique. And I believe there's time tested and what's the word? Like ancestral, just almost, it's like intuitive. It's just time tested, intuitive training and health philosophy. So I appreciate your time, and this has been a real pleasure, brother.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you for having me on. Glad we can talk about some powerful things, and looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And hopefully this isn't the last time, man. Hopefully we can bring you back on when you're after a day of surfing in Mexico.
Hey, that would be a nice setup, because I've seen you have some videos of guys out by the beach. You did a podcast there, so.
Oh yeah, that's my good friend Ian, man. That's yeah, dude. I like ideally in person podcasts are my preferred method, but at this point in the podcast, it's just about having a pipeline of conversations. So ideally at some point, maybe I'll have like a beachside studio.
Dude, that'd be something right there.
That'd be gnarly. All right,
no,
brother.
It's cool. It's cool what you're doing. So I appreciate you having me on and getting the chance to talk to you and share some cool information.
Likewise, brother.
Awesome.
Right on. And with that, I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation with Trevor. His nuanced perspectives on health, healing, and performance provide us with some remarkable insights and valuable information. Certainly worth pondering. Check out Trevor on Instagram for training and healing content at Trev_Funk. That's TREV_FUNK, Trev_Funk on Instagram. And go to his website, The Wellness by Design. That's thewellnessbydesign.com to learn more about his principles and training with him. Thank you for being a part of the Tyro Experience. Until next time, stand firm in the arena.